Welcome back to Betting Pros' College Football Win Total Preview Series. I am your host, Thor Nystrom, joined as always by the godfather of recruiting, Mike Farrell of Mike Farrell Sports. Today we're going to be talking about the ACC and running through our favorite win total bets. We have a lot to get through, so without further ado, let's get right into it. Let's start with the big boy. Let's start with Clemson, who's been installed at 9.5 wins by most books, although they have peaked up to 10 at a couple. The Clemson Tigers, Mike, who have done a little bit of changing here in the offseason, have a new offensive coordinator, a guy that helped TCU get to the national title last year. Also have a new quarterback who we got a peek at last year. What do you think about the Clemson Tigers at that 9.5 to 10 win total?
I love 9.5. I take the over on that. I think they're going to win 10 games minimum. 10's tough. With 10, you're talking 11-1, and that's a little bit more difficult. You got that Florida State game, which is going to be intriguing. But this is a loaded roster. I mean, I was going through my position groupings, for the ACC, and it just kept coming back to Clemson in depth at every position. You worry about Cade Klubnik. He didn't look amazing last year, but the team got a spark around him. It was clear that they played with a higher energy. They were tired of the DJU, just limited offense. And with Garrett Riley there, I think you're going to see things opened up a little bit better. Will Shipley's amazing. They got a great 1-2 punch at running back. Wide receivers still aren't what we're used to, but good. And defensively, they're loaded. So give me a definitive over at 9.5. At 10, I'm still leaning over, but I would pass at 10. I don't like that number.
I'm pretty close to where you're at. My system's win total on Clemson is 10.4. So, I have tickets on the over at 9.5. At 10, that's where it gets to be a little bit of a tighter decision, but I'd still lean over at 10. I really like this team. The upgrade from DJU to Klubnik is really big, and I think the upgrade from Brandon Streeter to Garrett Riley is really big too. And you already love the defense. Up the middle, they're absolutely ridiculous between Tyler Davis, Duke playing next to him, and then Jeremiah Trotter and Barrett Carter. They're just absolutely ludicrous there. So they can get back to playing defense the way they have before. And we already started to see the offensive improvement last year, even with some of the struggles at DJU. They were 100th in points per game the year before. They jumped up to 30th last year. And then we started to see what the offense could be with Klubnik once you start to pass the ball a little bit better. I don't know if he's Trevor Lawrence. I don't think he is, but he's certainly a lot better passing the ball than DJU, whose accuracy woes just killed the offense and bogged it down a bit over these last couple of years. So we're definitely both going over on Clemson at that 9.5 number. Now we're going to jump to another team that has a 9.5 number and this one is uniform across all the sports books. The Florida State Seminoles, a team who has been going up here the last couple of years. Talent level way up under Mike Norvell. And Mike, this is your area of expertise, recruiting. Norvell's been absolutely killing it there. Do you think that he has gotten this thing up and running enough where they're going to be at double-digit wins this coming year?
So killing it now, but his first couple of years recruiting were a bit pedestrian. He really made up for that with the portal, adding weapons. I mean, they're really loaded on offense. I don't see, and this is funny because I had an infamous tweet a year ago heading into last season where I didn't like the offense on paper. Johnny Wilson hadn't emerged. Jordan Travis was not the quarterback yet that we saw last year. They added so much in the portal that had made an immediate impact on that offense that now it looks unstoppable. Defensively, they got some issues up front. Interior defensive line, but they have the edge guys. Again, they've addressed a lot of things in the portal. Linebacker, defensive back, solid. The defense is the only question mark I have, but I'm going over 9.5. I like that number. They should win 10. Even if they lose to Clemson, they should win the other games because the roster is just so ridiculously loaded.
Yeah, I'm at 10.3 wins with Florida State, so I'm definitely going over that 9.5 number as well. You have 17 returning starters on a team that was good last season, and you mentioned how well they did in the portal. It wasn't as much of the quantity approach of a team like the aforementioned Colorado Buffaloes, but a quality approach. Norvell only signed 10 guys in the portal this offseason. 8 of them were 4-stars. Those guys are going to be the ones that are coming in and contributing immediately. And he targeted the very few positions where they had holes at. So, I mean, like, and the depth of this team, you look throughout the 2 deep, now they have depth everywhere. And I don't know how he got some of these guys to return, like Jared Verse and some of those different guys, but however he did it, good on him. This team's absolutely loaded. Can't wait for the ACC title game when invariably Clemson's going to meet up with Florida State. This league has gotten a lot better. But yeah, and you know, in the first game, the Florida State LSU rematch, I can't wait for that in week 1. But definitely going over there. And those are the 2 games that, by the way, for Florida State that I have them as underdogs in this season, my system. 2.7 point adjusted underdog against LSU in that opener. 3.4 point adjusted underdog against Clemson in week 4. The rest of the games, my system has Florida State favored by at least 6.8 points in the other 10 games on the schedule. So that's why I'm going over that 9.5 number. Mike, let's go down the pecking order now. You know, obviously you have your 1, 2 in the ACC, and then you're going to drop down a little bit to some teams that have a little bit more flaws. North Carolina, a team where you have the top 3 potential draft pick in Drake May, but then you got some questions. The defense has been crappy here these last couple years. I don't know how much better it can get in 1 year. Played a little bit better down the stretch for Gene Chizik last year. They have a new offensive coordinator now that Longo left for Wisconsin. We'll see how Chip Lindsey can do this coming year. UNC's win total is 8.5 at the sports books. What do you think about UNC, and are you going over or under that total?
I'm going under. I like Mac Brown. You know, I think he's a great coach, smart guy. I like Drake May. You know, I like him better as a pro than Caleb Williams. I'm one of the few guys that actually feels that way because he's, you know, Caleb is a little bit better improvising, but not much. And people look at Caleb Williams and they see, you know, a potential scrambling quarterback. Drake May's a better runner. He's just taller and bigger, and you don't expect it. So he's got a lot of Trevor Lawrence qualities to him, from throwing to passing. They're going to be okay on offense. They're going to put up points. That defense is bad. I don't know if it's going to get better. They actually lost more than they gained in the portal. You know, it has to improve. You know, just like we talked last time about Tennessee, it has to get better. It's so bad. But can it get better enough to consistently put a 9-3 seasons together? Not for me. I'm 8-4 at best for these guys because I don't trust the defense.
Yeah, this one would be a pass for me. I'm right around that 8.5 number, like literally right around it. So I just don't see a ton of value here. And I think they're kind of a high variance team, right? Like, I mean, their defense was almost so bad, you expect improvement. It's almost only one way to go. But yeah, you're totally right. Like some of their better defenders, at least on paper, actually left in the portal. And so it's like, yeah, you sort of expect improvement, but it's like, well, some of their better guys left. So you're wondering about that. And then they're obviously led by the offensive foot, but then the offensive guru just walked out the door. And you know, you tend to be like, well, Drake May will just sort of Band-Aid over that. But at the end of last season, I seen where they started to drop eight defenders against him into coverage every time he dropped back. Like every defensive coordinator turned into Barry Odom against Drake May. And it actually started slowing him down. And it started to get me to think about the previous quarterback there, Sam Howell, where that discombobulated him his last year. You remember Sam Howell going into his last season at UNC. Everyone thought that guy was a top 10 pick. Everyone and their mother. Everybody. And then they started dropping 8 guys on him every single time. He went from a consensus top 10 pick to a 5th rounder. I'm not saying that that's going to be Drake May, but now you have a new offensive coordinator. Now defensive coordinators know that you struggle a little bit when you drop 8 guys back. That's a question he's going to have to answer all season. And by the way, he just lost his projected number 1 receiver when he was going to have a brand new faces on offense anyway. The guy's catching his passes. The kid that they had brought in from Kent State that looked so good in the spring that the NCAA initially had said, yeah, you're cleared. Now they're revoking his eligibility because they said he's transferred twice. They decided to change the rule, even though he didn't play at one of the schools. The NCAA we know and love has decided that now they're going to play Cowboys again with the eligibility rules. We'll see if Mac Brown can get that thing turned around, but Drake May might have just lost his wide receiver 1 for the season. So there's a lot of questions there. I can't go under or over. I just got to pass on that one. Mike, another one where I'm I'm right around there with this one too. It's a win down from there at 7.5, but the Miami Hurricanes are another team where, for different reasons, where I'm just like, I don't really know which way to go. What about you? Like, what do you say about the Miami Hurricanes at a 7.5 win total out there in Vegas?
Yeah, so 7.5 is a little bit high for me. This is a team that had a losing record last year. I don't think they've improved their roster that much. We've got a quarterback question with Tyler Van Dyke. Is he going to be the Tyler Van Dyke we saw before, or is this the guy who was injured last year and struggled? They still haven't addressed their wide receiver issues. There's questions whether Mario Cristobal is a good game coach or not. I don't know if that's true. We're going to find out. The schedule doesn't set up. I would take the under on that. I'm not saying they're going to have a losing season again. There will be slight improvements, but I'm not ready to say that this team is going to be anything close to 8-4, 9-3. I'll see it when I believe it. He's done a good job recruiting, but they're going to be young in some aspects, and they've done an okay job in the portal. But this was a bad football team. They lost to Middle Tennessee State, and it wasn't even close. There's so many weaknesses on that defense that they're going to get better, but how much better? I don't trust them, so I'm going under.
Yeah, it's hard to after last year, right? Like, I don't know where you were at on Miami in the preseason last year, but I was pretty high on them heading into the year just from the personnel they had on hand, and obviously greatly underwhelmed. This year, you have 19 guys returning who have starting experience, and I liked what they did theoretically in the offseason. Cristobal, at least, sort of publicly admitted that he made mistakes with his coordinator hires. He gets rid of Gaddis. I like that decision. He brings in Shannon Dawson. I like that decision too. Because, you think about it, and Dawson is a really good schematic fit, I would think, with Tyler Van Dyke. If you want to squeeze the last bit out of Tyler Van Dyke and do one last run at getting the potential out of him, that's the kind of guy that I would want. You sit Van Dyke back there, you put him in a air raid system, and then we know that they have athletes out there. They brought in some receivers in the portal. Now they have speed out there. I think that could work. We don't know. I mean, if Tyler Van Dyke plays like he did last year, it ain't going to work. But Tyler Van Dyke was banged up last year, so you cross your fingers that he stays healthy this year, and that system theoretically should work, especially because they're going to have more health. Hopefully, again, crossing your fingers on the offensive line. Zion Nelson was the guy we were really excited for last year, and then we didn't get to see him, right? He was on milk cartons all year because he was injured. Hopefully, you have him back. And then, Mike, some of those true freshmen they brought in that we've been hearing about. The one kid, Mike, what's his name? Is it Maluga or Maloga?
I don't think he's ready.
Francis,
you
don't think he's ready? I've seen him as a projected starter on some things.
Well, this is the thing. They brought in a couple 5-star offensive tackles, and people think offensive tackles and they can play guard or tackle. They think they're plug and play. I just don't know. I mean, they're going to be good. The projection is good, but to start Power 5 day one and rely on that, that's my issue. Now, Cristobal's a great offensive line recruiter. He did a great job developing guys at Oregon. He obviously has the most amazing offensive line resume when he was at Alabama. But that's one of my issues, is this is going to be a young football team at certain positions, and there's growing pains with that. So he's good, don't get me wrong. But is an offensive lineman ready to step in and be a starter right away, especially when you're playing some of these ACC teams that have, tremendous edge rushers? I'm not sure.
I feel like Miami, they're not going to be close to this number. I feel like they either clear it by 2.5 or they go under by 2. They're either a beautiful disaster again, they miss another bowl game, and then maybe Cristobal's even gone, or else they just roar back and they're like a double-digit win team. But my number is, like I said, right around this 7.5 number, but I don't think they end up finishing right around there. That's just sort of splitting the baby on the projection. They have all the talent to be a double-digit win team, but they absolutely could be what they were last year again. If multiple of these things crop up again, you have the bad play calling with the injury woes again in conjunction.
Well, that's the thing. You have 2 new coordinators as well. I mean, you got coaching changes and all that stuff. And I think this is a 4-year reclamation project for him. But the fans already think he's a failure, and everybody's making fun of the season last year and all that stuff. He's not in danger of being on any hot seat whatsoever. He's got a guaranteed contract. He's going to be there for, I believe, 10 years, possibly, But I just don't see the ability to take a precipitous move upwards when you're bringing in 2 new coordinators, a bunch of young guys, and you don't have a ton of talent on the roster. I mean, when he arrived there, the offensive and defensive lines were bad by Miami standards. The wide receivers were probably the worst wide receiver group since Schnellenberger. Horrible, before he rebuilt the program. Horrible. So there's just so many issues that have to be done here. And people think, oh, Mario Cristobal, Miami guy, Miami alum, and his success at Oregon, his success at Alabama, he should be 10-2. They're not ready for that yet. So I'm under with you as well. I'm not so convinced that it's going to be either 5-7 or 9-3. I think they might go 7-5, but I don't trust the number. So I'm going to say under.
So let's go from a program that might be trepidatious about their coach to a program that is in full honeymoon phase with theirs. The Louisville Cardinals obviously brought back native son Jeff Brom over the offseason. They have a win total where I think if people are just checking them out, like casual fans right now, they might get some sticker shock at how high this thing is. It was at 8 at a lot of books just recently, and it still is at a lot of them. But I seen one earlier today. It's at 8.5. So I mean, like this thing keeps going up. Earlier this, when it opened earlier this season, you were seeing them more in the 7s, and this thing just keeps getting bet up. But Mike, between 8.5 with the Louisville Cardinals in Jeff Brom's first season. We'll talk about the schedule here in a bit. It's not hard. Brom caught it right in his first season. What do you think about the Louisville Cardinals with that win total?
8. I don't like 8. I would pass on 8. 8.5, I would take the under. Just because of the transition that has to occur. Obviously, he's got his quarterback back, that he worked with at Purdue, and there's talent on this team. Thrash is one of the best wide receivers nobody has heard of and knows about. And the defense, they're starting to recruit, and they were under Satterfield, South Florida speed. So they're going to be fast. They're going to be physical. And we saw flashes of it last year. I mean, you remember when his job was on the line, he ran off, I think it was 3 very impressive wins, and they started to play together. This is a sleeping giant type of team, but not in year one for him. They lost their coach, but they kind of punted him out the door because they told him your win total has to be plus, 8 or 9 next season. I'm not sure exactly what the number was. And he obviously took the cushier route to Cincinnati, but as a good, bounce back, they went out and got their native son. He's going to be very good at Louisville. They're going to be a very good football team. The schedule's easy, but I'm not putting my money on 8, and I'm not going 9. This team is not going to go 9-3, so I'm on the under.
So I do like the over at 8. 8.5. That's where it becomes a pass for me personally. My system's win total on Louisville was 8.6. So like at the 8.5 number, I got to stay away. But getting that protection of the push at 8-4, that's what makes it fine for me to bet it there. You look at this schedule. It's so friggin' easy. It's hard for me to find 5 losses on there. Let's go through it really quick. You got Georgia Tech in the opener. That's a W. Then you got Murray State. That's a W. Then you got the corpse of Indiana in the third game. That's a dub. Then you got Boston College. Mike, have I said a loss yet? So nope. you got a 4-0 September. Then you got an away game at Boston College. I think it's fair to call that a coin flip. Like my system's got that as a pick 'em. Then you got a home game against Notre Dame. That could be your first loss, but they're probably going to be 7.5 point underdogs in that one. Then you got an away game against the Nard Dog in Pittsburgh. I have Louisville as a 2-point favorite in that game in Pitt. I think that's fair. Home game against Duke, I got Louisville as a 5-point favorite. Home game against Virginia Tech, 17-point favorite, Louisville. Then a home game against Virginia, 17.5 point adjusted favorite by my system. Then away at Miami, 3-point underdog. and then a home game against Kentucky where it's a coin flip. It's hard to get to 7-5 there. So I just think at the 8 you have the protection. I do think Louisville's going 9-3 this year. Like if I had to say, but like 8-4, 9-3. So between those two things, that's where at 8.5, I just think you can find better value on the board. So that's where I get a little skittish there. But at the 8, I'm fine with that one. Mike, just a couple that we'll group really quickly, not as sexy teams, but these were 3 of the under tickets that I'm holding in my pocket. So I thought we just hit them quick, closing out this conference. The 3 that I have, Mike, Pitt, which you can find at 6.5 or 7, depending on the book that you shop at. Virginia Tech, 5.5. That might be my favorite under in this conference. And if it's not, then it's because Georgia Tech is. They're at 4.5. Any of those teams that you want to talk about, have at it.
I like Pitt over. I really respect him. I really respect him as a coach. He always carves out a couple wins that you don't expect. Now, Pitt fans, every fan base is spoiled and they want more. But, they lost a lot on defense and they always tend to replenish. The defense always tends to play strong. Obviously you've got some quarterback situations. The offense could be iffy, but I just feel Narduzzi is a guy. You said 6.5, right?
Yeah, 6.5 or 7, depending on where you shop.
He's a 7-5 guy at worst. So I like Pitt just based on the coaching staff and the fact that he's been consistently over that number. Virginia Tech is way under. I like Pry. I think he's a good guy. I think he's a Beamer disciple. I think maybe if given time, he'll get it right there. But right now, he won't. And then you've got your Georgia Tech. You got to go under 4.5. You just have to go under.
Yeah, I agree with that. Yeah, I mean, starting with Pitt, that of the 3, that's probably the one I'm least confident in, but I got them at 6.2. So, I mean, if you can find that 7 out there, that's the one where I'd shade it under. At 6.5, I pass on that one. But you mentioned it. It's just because they lost so much, but you are starting to trust Narduzzi more because he's done it so often. But man, they lost a lot, and they've lost a lot these last couple of years. We'll see if he can replenish it again.
The defensive line is what's tricky to me. They've lost
losing
so much,
but
every year somebody comes out of somewhere that you wouldn't expect and has a great year on that defensive line. Every year,
for sure.
And so when I question it, and I always do question it, Pitt fans are always like, we trust our coaches. We're going to develop guys. And so I wrote an article, I think it was even an over-under, about Pitt's sack total because they've been very, very good in sacks over the last many years, up amongst the nation's leaders. And I went in under, and I got a couple DMs from some coaches thanking me for that on the Pitt staff. They think they're going to be a ferocious defensive line as usual. And I've doubted that for a couple of years, and I'm not going to doubt it anymore. So that's where we, differ a little bit as far as I know what your concern is. I know when you say they lost a lot, the first thing you look at is the defensive line. I think they're going to be okay. Yep. So if he goes 6-6, I'd be stunned. He's not that coach. 7-5 to him is not a great year, but I think that's the minimum for me. So we disagree on that one a little bit, but we agree on the under of Virginia Tech and Georgia Tech. I mean, they really don't have a shot to get over those numbers, I don't think.
Yeah, the Virginia Tech under might be my favorite bet of this whole conference, but they're at 5.5. To me, that's only on name recognition. My system's win total on them is 3.4. I think that team stinks. They last year they were sunk by the fact that they couldn't move the ball at all on offense. I know Brent Pry, he a defensive guy, and it's like you mentioned he came from
Beamer ball and all
Beamer
the
ball and Bud Foster.
Yeah,
and it was like, if Bud Foster had gotten a job earlier, head coaching job earlier in life, I'm Brent Pry, that would be me. But I get the emphasis on defense and special. I get it. It's great. But your offense was so terrible last year, and Grant Wells sunk you, and the fact your offensive line stunk, you couldn't run the ball. And in this portal season, there was all these starting caliber quarterbacks out there. You signed friggin' Kyron Drones. I've seen Kyron Drones play. he's not good. Like the guy can't throw. He's not going to scare any defensive with his arm. So that's the guy you're putting up against Grant Wells.
And this is the thing. It's like Ali Jennings is coming over there, so that's going to make a big difference in the passing game. It won't if you don't have a quarterback.
They exactly. I like that was the only thing in the portal I liked what they did. They signed a couple good receivers, but they don't have any quarterbacks to throw them the ball. And they have the uninspiring running backs again. Their offensive line is going to struggle again. I just didn't know what they were doing. There was all these pretty solid quarterbacks out there that I think would have accepted Virginia Tech's offer, and then they just give that scully to Kyron Drones. Kyron Drones, if you're listening, prove me wrong, please. I just don't think you can do it. So I'm going under on them. I'm going under on Georgia Tech too. I didn't like the hire where they were going after Fritz, and then Fritz, leaves them at the altar because they were pushing him to accept that offer before the AAC title game. And then they're like, oh, okay, well, we'll just give it to the interim coach then. It was like, Bill Stewart back in the day with West Virginia. They hired, what was that saying, Mike? They hired the painter to build the house. Never a good idea. I'm not sure your opinion on Key, but I did not like that.
I think, that they played with a little bit more spirit, when he took over. But Jeff Collins is a good coach, and he couldn't get it done. And I'm not saying he's the best coach ever, but this isn't a precipitous upgrade.
Mike, those 4 wins that Key had down the stretch last year, they were all by 5 points or less. I think that was a little bit of a fluky run that Mr. Key had to get that job. They don't have the talent to stack up. So 3-9, 4-8. I mean, Virginia Tech is going to go 4-8 at best. And Georgia Tech 4-8 at best as well. So but most likely 3-9. Exactly. Before we get to the Pac-12, guys, let's take a quick break because we all need to make a pact right now, including you, Mike Farrell, to compete against each other in Betting Pros' college football picks contest this season, which you guys can access at bettingpros.com/college or -college /and I always get confused. But there's going to be monthly giveaways, and the season-long winner gets a big prize, which I need to check with my boss if they'll give it to me if I win, but I digress.
You will not get that prize.
They probably won't give it to me.
No.
Join the group and your college football picks will be counted. Scoring is based on ROI, so making a killing this year, and you're going to win our contest too. Join that contest. But guys, that's all the time that we have for today, and that's going to put a wrap on our preseason series. Make sure to circle your calendars for August 26th, which is only 11 days away from when we're recording today. I can't believe we're that close. Saturday, August 26th, our very first live show of the year. Mike, you can see this grin on my face. I can't wait when Mike and I start doing our live shows on Saturdays, bringing you guys through the entire slate of college football games, giving you our picks for all the day's games. Make sure you come and check us out on our first episode. We'll be doing our maiden voyage on August 26th. And if you missed any of our previous episodes, the Big Ten Notre Dame episode or the SEC Big 12 episode, you can check those previews out on YouTube or on the podcast feed. So you check out all that stuff. But until then, for Mike Farrell, I'm Thor Nystrom. Let's cash some tickets.